Everyone, are you tired? After? No, no, yeah. Okay. So, my name is Krasimir. I'm from Bulgaria. I'm working as a front-end developer for a company based in London. It's a health startup called TerraReach. We're doing some cool stuff there. I love writing code, of writing articles, of writing books. Yeah, the resolution is not really good. So this is my book. I spent last 8 months writing this book. It's about Node, and it's not really a typical one. It's like a collection of 12 tutorials about, for example, using Node with Angular, making command line to or desktop application with Node. If you're interested, here's a promo code from the publisher. You could get 40% discount for the ebook version of the book. So I'm going to talk about Absurd.js. Is there anyone that's actually know about Absurd.js? Someone? Oh, one. That's great. Before a year and so, I had to use Bootstrap. It's how many of you know about Bootstrap? I guess most. Yeah. So we have really a lot of projects based on Bootstrap. So at my company, I had to use Bootstrap, and because I needed to make some modifications, I have to learn less, because Bootstrap is based on less. And very soon, I actually migrated to Sass, because, yeah, Sass is better, to be honest. It has a lot more features. But at some point, I decided to create my own framework based on Sass, my own CSS framework. But I found out that Sass is actually not so powerful. Like, you have some really nice features, but it has some problems with, it has some problems. I'm not going into details, but I wasn't happy with Sass. And what we as developers do when we don't find a tool that we need, we normally start thinking about creating our own tool. But before to create my own tool, you have to go to check the repos of this guy. He wrote everything, so probably he has something about you, and that was the case. So I tried Stylus. It's a CSS preprocessor. It's written by TJ. It has more features than Sass. It's a bit more powerful, but it's still the same concept. So there are still some missing things, and I decided to create my own CSS preprocessor. So yeah, normally it ends like that when you try to do something by your, but yeah. So I started thinking about what I have to do, and the CSS preprocessor is something that accepts code, and you have to actually invent your own language. Like you have to understand the instructions that are written in the code, and you have to compound them. So this sounds like inventing new language, and because I'm not really that smart, I'm sure that I'm not able to write a whole new language. So instead of inventing a new language, I actually decided to use some language that already exists, some language that we all love, and this is JavaScript. So it was really easy decision. So instead of accepting something, my CSS preprocessor actually accepts JavaScript, and there is no compiler. It's just Node module. I started thinking about this and introduced the idea to a couple of my friends by saying that I'm going to write my CSS in JavaScript and with JavaScript. So they said, what the fuck you're talking about? This is so stupid. This sounds really absurd. So this is where the name came from. It's really, it came from the feedback that I got from my friends. And yeah, I started playing with the idea, and it's actually really easy to convert JavaScript object to CSS because they are really similar. We have the super cool feature of the CSS preprocessors, nesting, which in JavaScript is, yeah, it's just there. You could nest objects. And yeah, the first version actually did just transformation from the JSON from the left to the CSS on the right. So it was really simple. But one of the ideas of the CSS preprocessors is actually to write less and to receive the CSS. But this wasn't, it wasn't like that in my case because you have all these quotes that you have to put in order to keep your JavaScript valid. And instead of using dashes, because most of the CSS properties, they have dashes in the names, I just transformed them to camel case. It wasn't still too fast. I mean, I was writing a lot, so I just decided to create shortcuts for actually for all the CSS properties. So, like for example, FZ is just font size, for example. And of course, something like makes. So you write some special keywords as properties in the JavaScript object, and you get something big on the right side. One of the reasons that I thought that JavaScript may work for writing CSS is the fact that the language already has all the cool features of the Sass preprocessors, like functions, like variables, objects. We could use object-oriented JavaScript to write your CSS. So it's like in this example, we have a variable, we have a function. So all we have to think about at the end is just to construct a valid JavaScript object or arrays. And of course, I really hate to write code, a lot of code. So I built in the, I actually steal this from animate.css library. So it's simple CSS library for creating animations. So I just copied all the animations in Absurd. There is option to create your own property, CSS property. Like I always wanted to do this because when you write a lot of CSS, you really want to create abstractions. Like you have logic blocks that you repeat here and there. And it's really nice if you could actually combine them in something really small, and you write just one line and you get a lot of things. And I code this plugin in Absurd.js. Like in this example, I defined my own property. So yeah, I was there. I mean, I was able to write my CSS with JavaScript. I was kind of happy. But at some point, I realized that I could actually use the same library for generating HTML. So it was really easy to just switch the parser and get the JSON, the JavaScript object, and construct HTML. Then I was generating HTML from my templates, but yeah, at some point I needed to fill them with data because, like, creating HTML, you probably at some point will want to fill this HTML with data. So this HTML preprocessor, it actually became the template engine. So there's really simple solution, like 20 lines of code. I again steal it from a guy it was in GitHub somewhere. So Absurd actually accepts JSON, and it could produce HTML. And the thing that you put between these expressions, these dynamic things that if you use Angular, it's kind of similar. The point here is that this thing inside, it's not my own thing. It's not a language that I invented. It's actually still valid JavaScript. So you could write everything there, like for example, using to uppercase method or to lowercase or something. So all the power of JavaScript is actually available in this HTML preprocessor. So I have JavaScript as an input, of course JSON. Thankfully to TJ, he wrote something, CSS parse, I think was the name of the module. So he uses this in Stylus to actually get real CSS and to convert it to JSON. and to start doing his things there in Stylus. So I use the same module, and Absurd.js is actually accepting pure CSS, so you could accept CSS and produce CSS at the same time. But the really interesting thing is that my colleagues were not really happy using Absurd. They said, I'm not going to write JavaScript for my CSS. And this came like a really nice feature because I wrote so many plugins for them, and like all the custom properties that I created, they were able to use them in CSS because Absurd at some point accepted JavaScript, JSON, and CSS. And there is a guy that loves this language at the end, so he created a plugin for this, and it now accepts this. So this was the main version. Yeah.
It'd be very simple, for example, to write CoffeeScript, right, and put it through Absurd, for example.
There is a pull request for this, but because I don't know Coffee, I didn't review it yet. So it's actually there. It's in a fork of some guy, but yeah, it should be possible. So this was the first version of Absurd. I was really happy with this. At my company, we are using it in production. But we had a really old project, like 6 or 7 years project. The code there was, it was really, really bad. It was a PHP-based project, and the structure of the project was something like this. So we have CSS folder for the CSS, JavaScript folder for JavaScript. We have templates, and we have PHP files. But all the files were there were like thousands really files, thousands style sheets. It was a big mess. And we decided to actually create subfolders in these folders and put, for example, the styles for the about page in about folder and JavaScript in about folder in JavaScript folder. But this still was really bad because we have so many subfolders. So we decided to collect everything that is related to one page or one widget or whatever, and just put it in one folder. So if you, for example, want to work on the products page, all you have to do is just to go to the products folder, and you will find all the HTML, everything there. And the client of this project is kind of a technical guy. He was a coder. He reads for what's going on with the web. So he came to us one day and said, "Okay, my business is going well. I want to make my website like a single-page app, and I want to be able to use it on all the mobile devices. And of course, you should keep my seal because I paid for this before a couple of years." So we were like. Yeah, I was totally against this because you have a static PHP-based application, and he said, I want a single-page app. So we were, yeah, but we have to do this. And we started thinking about Angular because it was so cool. We tried Angular, we tried Ember. Like, we really started working with these frameworks, but it was a team of 22 or 3 developers. So the learning curve for these frameworks, it's not so short. So they first have to invest time to learn the framework. We weren't, sorry? You just agree. So we tried Angular, we tried Ember, we tried Backbone. I'm not saying that these frameworks are bad. I mean, I don't like Ember, but the other two, I'm a big fan of them. So they just didn't work for this project because they were, especially Angular and Ember, they are designed for single-page apps, and we don't really have single-page apps. So Backbone was really close to what we wanted, but it's too.
What's the last one?
It's Backbone.js.
Backbone.
The blue one. Yeah, it's Backbone. And yeah, we really tried them. Like we invest enough time for research, but we decided to use our own solution because the project was quite big, and we really wanted to make sure that the thing that we're developing is something really small. It's not so complex. There are not so many abstractions. So all the guys in the team could actually learn this really fast. And I started thinking about, okay, I have, in one folder I have template, which is HTML. I have CSS, which is CSS. And I have JavaScript. And because Absurd.js is actually something that could produce HTML, could produce CSS, and it's written in JavaScript, so I suggested, okay, why we are not using this? And I ported this library from a Node.js to a client side. It was really easy because everything is just JavaScript. And the client side port of the library is actually this. You have, it really looks like Backbone. So you have HTML property, you have CSS property. And what it happens behind the scenes is that Absurd.js converts the HTML property to a valid DOM element, compiles the CSS, and injects it to the head of the page. So, and this is not a one-shot process. You could do this several times. Sorry. And this was the whole library. Like, we have only one method, which is called populate. And when you call it, Absurd gets the data from the HTML property, from the CSS property, does whatever it does. So it compiles everything. And you have a valid DOM element and a CSS property. The concept that behind the HTML property is actually the same as Facebook's React. There's a virtual DOM, so Absurd finds the diffs between the virtual DOM and the actual DOM tree and applies only the changes when you call the populate method. So I like the event handling in Angular. So you just type attribute in the tag by saying that this tag we will accept a click event and we will execute the do something function, which is actually part of the component. So at some point we have just everything into components, and in this example there is something. The HTML property is actually a string. It's just reference to a DOM element. So this actually solves the problem with the seal, because some pages, the content of some pages was generated by PHP, and we had to leave this. And yeah, so Absurd works with HTML that is already generated. And I like the dependency injection of Angular, so I steal it from there. It's absolutely the same implementation. Like you just define something, and magically it appears as a argument of your function. There is a built-in module called router for making routes. There is an Ajax wrapper. There is a built-in JavaScript module for working with media queries, because of course this should be responsive, because it's really cool. And yeah, we actually ship it. I mean, we were really happy with the result. Like, yeah, the client was happy, we were happy. So, but at some point I started worrying about something, and I started thinking about what the web is built of. It's built of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and what we did is actually work like that. We put the HTML and CSS into JavaScript, which is absurd. Yeah, so if I have to make a conclusion of my talk, I would say that you should not be afraid to try your crazy ideas, because this may be the really shortest way to the solutions of your problem, like it happened with me. This was a really important project, but Absurd sounds like a really crazy idea, but yeah, it works. So, yeah, thank you.